This is Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready. We're about to live in your head rent-free.
This is episode 213.
I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
I'm Marcus.
And I'm Cajun.
Francis here in the captain's chair again, folks. New subject, completely new subject, as our friends at Monty Python would say. We've talked about a lot of great craft. You know, that's kind of one of the themes we go back to. And we kind of come up with the idea of why aren't we talking about some of the greatest craftsmen of our time as regards to the film industry? Great directors. This is our first of a long, ongoing series.
Not long.
Well, hopefully it will be, because there's a lot of
Yes,
folks,
it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks that
We're only going to do 3 in a row, which to me is a lot. But
Oh, you're still talking about the movies. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there's lots of options for this, and we'll do some different ones. This is one of those things that is going to keep coming back, to keep our listeners coming back, to recognize, we're always fresh. We're always topical.
But it is probably just the top level of mass consumption,
it is.
along with television. So yes, when you talk about the craft of it and the creators, it's well worth discussing.
Oh yeah, because
same as artists and writers.
Because
and
director has the complexity involved in directing a major motion picture, and that's really what we're talking about here.
I mean, it is your story.
It is. You ultimately are the one.
You might not be the writer, and your story is being interpreted by the actors, but as a director, it's your story,
and it's your responsibility too. For a budget in the millions, multi-millions in many cases, and that's kind of where we're gonna pick one here that I think is one of the greatest directors of all time. He is a modern director. In fact, as we record this, his at the time most recent film, Napoleon, just dropped a few weeks ago.
Short stuff.
Absolutely, and I have not seen it yet. I've seen clips from it. I have. Schedule being what it is, I have not been able to make it, but it is, to me, it's like the finally somebody is doing justice to this time, character, and place in history. And from all that I've read, what I've seen, of course he's the guy to do it, and that's Ridley Scott. One of the greatest directors of our time. I'm hoping that all of us know him. In fact, the whole Snakes and Otters owes a great deal to him, because our name comes from one of his pictures, the one he won Best Director for, 2005's Gladiator.
2001.
2000s.
Yes.
Yes, I think Robert's correct.
All right. Yeah,
It's older than 2005.
Yeah. 2000. You're exactly right. And it's
score one for me.
You're right. But then again, Ridley Scott has been. He's continually. He's 86 years old as we record this.
Yeah.
He's getting up there,
and he's still turning in some amazing work. I mean, Napoleon is. I don't want to say it's a crowning achievement, but it's certainly one of many amazing achievements that he's done in a career that's lasted really since 1977, when we were all kids. And we'll get into a little bit of that here shortly. But I wanted to make sure, guys, got comments, personal anecdotes, experience other than.
When he and I were having lunch the other day. Oh, not that kind of personal anecdote.
Well, hey, if you had lunch with Ridley Scott, why the hell didn't you call us? That's right, because he's amazing too. If you've read some of the recent commentary on Napoleon, which of course I knew this was coming. They always find historians somewhere, those quote unquote historians somewhere, that said, well, Napoleon wasn't really present at Marie Antoinette's beheading, and Ridley Scott should know better than portraying that. I'm thinking, and Scott doesn't miss a beat.
It's like, dude, it's a movie.
It's exactly it. Thank you very much. He says,
but you know what though?
Welcome to creative license.
Who can prove
that
he
is one
wasn't?
But people do tend to take film as gospel.
Exactly. People take film as it's like Abraham Lincoln and the internet. He said so it must be true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I saw him
but
fight.
today.
I saw him fight zombies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lincoln, that was, right?
Yeah,
And
with
vampires.
an axe.
I mean, did that
Vampires,
roll call at
Vampires, wasn't it?
Antoinette's beheading or something there, that they can go back
Well, I mean-
and check the log on who exactly was and
I mean,
wasn't?
they may have valid, he
they
may know he
may,
was
but-
somewhere else. But the point is, though, a lot of Braveheart is a great example.
Yeah.
Huge liberties, horrible history in that,
But a great movie.
but a great movie.
Yeah.
So,
Entertainment, not a
It is.
documentary.
but for those of us that are really big into history, that are real history buffs, the fact that people are going to see those things and think, okay, yes, so William Wallace is, the guy slept with his wife, and then, just a few years later, this happened, and, this, all that stuff.
That becomes history for so
That
many.
becomes history.
Yeah,
He doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
Not William Wallace was not the father of an English king.
Right.
That's right.
And
Edward the Third, who
I'll
was
grant you
arguably
that-
one of the greatest.
Yeah, Edward the Third.
Yeah, and I'll grant you that this is not a new process, because this sort of thing has always happened. The difference was it was either in the telling, verbally, or those few who were writing and getting stuff.
Yes.
So, but it's a much bigger and broader reach. So
yes.
that's one of the things that bothers me
Yeah,
about it.
film's a larger canvas.
It depends on how wide the liberties are, because the fact of whether Napoleon was present at Marie Antoinette's beheading, who the hell gives
Yeah,
a
nobody
shit?
cares about that.
Yeah, but
But-
did William Wallace sire Edward III? Yeah, that does matter a little bit.
Yeah, well, it matters only in the sense of accuracy,
Yeah.
and if you're none of these things that gets history wrong has a real impact in everyday life. There's absolutely nothing of consequences going to come of that unless somebody's going to argue about it in a bar.
Right.
But you see, we've gone through this before with writing.
Yeah.
History is written by the victors.
Yes,
Oh, absolutely.
It
An
is.
aphorism we've kept very true.
Exactly.
and history is filmed by the
And
victors.
it is. Because,
It's very.
And
it's-
it
to be
is
fair, those who
censored
lost don't
by
have
the
the money.
victors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because if you'll notice that, and like I say, I haven't
Yeah.
seen Napoleon, but you'll see many, and we're kind of going a little bit of a rabbit hole here. You will notice
Us? A
Yeah,
rabbit hole?
Yeah, imagine that.
Never.
So many movies that we know, especially those that deal with historical issues, are very Anglo-American centric.
Yes.
Absolutely so. It is almost impossible
Which
to do
means,
otherwise.
yeah, taking on
Because-
Napoleon's really hard to do.
Yeah, that's right. Because
we don't-
there's a reason that the French people
he's
are
a
going,
joke to us.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
and the French people are going. You kind of are. I don't want to say you're pissing in our Wheaties, but it's kind of close to that.
Pissing us off anyway.
Well, yeah, and it's and because they for
Well,
them
I mean, who
he
cares
is.
about the cheese-eating surrender monkeys?
Well, that's an interesting point because, yes, I had Hallmark Channel on the other night watching a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And it took place in either Sweden or Norway.
Oh yes,
99% of those actors are all native actors except for the one female lead when I looked it up online. 'Cause
that's
I thought
a
I
big
recognized
thing now.
somebody.
Swiss and Norse setting Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
That's become a
They
big
must be
thing.
getting
now.
some big
It-
tax breaks over
Well,
there.
interesting you say that because my wife loves Netflix, and one of the things, and she watches. I don't want to say dumbest things. I won't go that far, but Stranger Things.
Because she might be listening.
Well, yeah. Some of the things she watches, they're made in Norway, Sweden, and in
Yes.
Scandinavia,
Yes.
and they're dubbed. And some of them are very good.
Oh yes,
And it's like we're all of a sudden realizing it ain't all about what comes out of the American studios or even the British studios.
yeah. Streaming.
Australian, Swedish,
Oh yeah,
Norwegian,
Johan Gruffin.
German.
South Korean.
Johan Gruffin
South
did
Korean's big,
an amazing series called Harrow out of Australia. I mean,
Yes,
he's
well,
Welsh.
he's a corner.
Absolutely.
Basically, it's the Quincy of this day and age.
Absolutely, and 3 seasons, and it was amazing. And it's set
Have
in
you
Australia.
heard anything on a fourth?
No, I haven't.
Neither
I've been
have I.
watching it. Hulu picked it up, and it was must see. It was binge watch TV. It was very good. I mean, Johan Gruffin's a great actor, no question about that. But it's just one of those things that we've widened our lens a little bit.
In a way, that's
Well,
great, but in a way, it sucks because who can keep up with that?
You can't. You can't watch everything that's out there these days no more, and you can read everything
But this
that
is-
you want to.
But this expansion has come basically because of the speed of the internet.
That is.
Yeah.
We can
Yes.
get all of that to our homes. We can choose from all that, or we
That's
can
right.
seek it
our,
out.
Our consumption,
And
appetite for consumption, has
pandemic helped that out too.
Yes.
Everybody's
it did.
staying at home streaming
because all you had to do was stay home, and you were either having sex or watching TV, and you can only have so much sex.
or eating. Well, that,
eating, too.
that falls under the other two, but that's besides the point. But yeah, I mean that's when we
You
reach
do all
out
three of
looking.
those.
For
I've not
other
reached my
shows.
limit on that yet.
Yeah, I
Of
haven't
course
either.
you haven't. That's right.
I mean, we reached out to other countries for the shows because we were running out of stuff
Yeah.
here that we wanted to see.
That's right. And we discovered some of it is daggone good.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm trying to circle us back to Ridley
Yeah,
Scott.
yeah, so Ridley Scott.
Yes. This man here has been in many respects, he is one of the great movers and shakers of the film industry. He's a bit of a maverick because, like you said about Napoleon, people, he said basically, get a life. I'm making art here. I'm making it's historically based, and I'm not going really off the reservation because because I've done a lot of reading on it because it's an interest of mine.
Well, yeah, I mean,
He's not that far. I mean, it's
everything
not,
about
I mean,
the Revolution and Napoleon. It's hard to wrap your arms around.
Well, that's
anyway.
right, exactly. And he's the
So you
first
gotta
one
kinda
to ever, in
touch
my
on it.
opinion, do justice to this enormous scope that is almost impossible to
Yeah.
capture in a 2 or 3 hour movie. He did it.
Well,
I've
and
been
that's-
waiting my whole life for that. Really, I mean, it's not one that's been.
And I
done
will
well.
grant you this as far as some of the historical
Liberties.
liberties. That's a
That's the
fair
word-
way to put it.
it's
Yeah.
the word that's been used. Yeah.
Yes, and sometimes even bigger. Yeah, part of that is due to the medium. You have 2 hours, although Marvel's have helped push that out to 3 hours. On
Yeah,
occasion.
and Napoleon is like 243.
Yeah. That's still a really short amount of time to get a lot of stuff in. William Wallace and all the historical inaccuracies, a lot of that, I don't know if it was in the original book, but a lot of those are going to be due to the compressed nature of the story.
You have to do that to get it into a.
Yes.
And it was long. It was 2.5 hours,
Yeah.
which was hard to do in '95. But
Yeah.
but they made it happen. Mel Gibson was a big enough star at the time that he could.
Yeah.
I think he even bankrolled some of that.
Yeah.
To make that happen.
What was that fellow's name that wrote all that? Randall.
Randall Wallace.
Yeah, Randall Wallace. He was
yeah.
World War II. I mean, Civil War general.
Yeah.
He was. He was.
The screenwriter for Gladiator.
No.
Oh.
Excuse me.
No,
for Braveheart.
Yeah.
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 Lou Wallace
Lou Wallace.
was
That's right.
the Civil War general who wrote Ben-Hur.
Correct.
I thought he wrote.
Nope. Randall Wallace is a
Randall Wallace.
screenwriter who was distantly related,
Yes.
and he discovered, why don't we know about this guy?
Yeah, and so he deliberately conflated to make Wallace
Yes.
seem more heroic.
And got
everything.
Mel Gibson to sign on, who
yeah.
at the time was extremely
It was-
bankable.
It was a puff piece from the beginning.
It is, but it won Best Picture. I mean, it swept the Academy Awards. It was a well done movie. I mean, it was really. It's still one that we talk about.
It was good entertainment.
Yeah.
It was. It's intended to be
fun.
that way.
It was fun.
But that's not William Wallace.
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott. Here we go. I don't know how far we are into this. We've barely talked about the man. The man, like I said, he's 86 years old as of he wrote. I mean, Napoleon is his greatest, is his most recent.
But tell us about some of the early stuff.
I mean, the guy has
Get
an
started
amazing. I mean, he's British, as you know. He's actually a sir. In 2003, he was knighted by Elizabeth, Royal College of Art. He had the ability to direct from the very beginning. I mean, he did commercials in the 60s. He worked a little bit on some of the BBC TV, and he actually
that would be a really good grounding.
But
That's
did
right.
he ever do a Doctor Who episode?
he tried. He was going to.
That would be the Pentiment for any British
Would.
director.
He
Come
was
on.
going to do one, but something happened and it ended up where he wasn't able to, and they had somebody else do it. But he was involved with that at a time, and back in the because he was going to do one. It was under the second Doctor's tenure under Patrick Troughton. He was going to do one. This is in the late '60s, and it didn't exactly happen. But nevertheless, he builds a reputation of an amazing vision. What of the stuff that he does? Some of the commercials he's done, we still talk about. If it's British, we don't know about them as a general rule.
Well, now
Marcus?
one of the things that I've heard Michael Caine talk about this.
Yeah. Oh, we love Michael Caine.
Ridley Scott directed a Maxwell House coffee commercial back
Yes.
in the 60s. And he was so taken by the young lady in that he went out of his way to be her. That's his wife.
Chased
yeah,
her down and married her.
That's
Yes.
right. Yeah, she was in The Man Who Would Be King with him.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, it's an amazing. He's been married to her like forever.
Forever.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an amazing
And
lady.
then Ridley Scott's been casting his wife apparently in most of his movies since
Since 15.
Gladiator.
Yeah, his current wife, he's been
His
married
current
to her
wife.
since 15.
15,
So
yeah.
about coming up on 10 years. But you're right,
Yeah.
and that's not uncommon, of course.
No.
But we have to understand Scott's reputation. I mean, in his he built himself up very well, and he made us, like we've talked about in the show prep. like Spielberg, you do a smaller picture. Somebody gives takes a chance on you because you're talking about a budget.
Yeah.
And he made an amazing movie, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. I have. I love it. It's The Duelists in 1977. With
This is the name's kind of misleading. It's got nothing to do with like an actual duel.
no, absolutely.
Well,
does.
actually, it does.
Absolutely, it does.
That's how it started out. And
I'm thinking of
lasted
something
years.
else. Then I'm thinking of something else.
No, it's based. It's Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel.
Hell.
Oh yeah.
And I don't. And it's based on. And you should know this, Martin. I'm really stunned that you don't, because it's based on a Joseph Conrad story.
Oh, okay.
And here's an irony for you, because Harvey Keitel loses the role in Apocalypse Now, which is Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness,
Yeah.
and takes on the role in The Duelists with Ridley Scott, based on Joseph Conrad's novel The Duel. And essentially, it's two Napoleon. Go back to Napoleon.
Short story, actually.
Short story goes back to two Napoleonic French officers that have this argument early in the novel, and it goes back to the dueling culture of the time. They will duel each other as whenever they encounter each other constantly, and it's Harvey Keitel is really the one that's pushing this, his character. And I mean, it's that code of honor, to use one of our terms, that requires this, and it's set with the backdrop of the scope of the entire Napoleonic Wars.
That does not make sense as far as what I understand of duels and how a code of honor would work with that, because the whole point of a duel is to settle an issue.
That's right. And
so if they are continually dueling, either they are continually insulting each other, or they just hate each other.
That's it.
So there is no code of honor there.
Well, that's the
Or
backdrop
bad
for that's
shots.
the excuse for the
Doesn't
reason.
matter.
They
The
cannot
duel-
let go.
That's
Right.
Their issues.
And really, and if you see the movie, it's Harvey Keitel's character who won't let go. He's the one that has been, in his mind, been insulted, and he is so trapped. It's a good character study of someone who is so enculturated in something and so obstinate that they simply cannot let go. And Keith Carradine's character is constantly, this guy, he shows up, and next thing you know, he's got to, and it's usually swords. We're not talking pistols, if I recall correctly, sometimes, but for whatever reason, this keeps happening, and it's on the backdrop of the entire Napoleonic Wars from the French perspective. I mean, they're in Moscow, and they run into each other, and they're charging each other with swords and stuff like this in the middle of all the other people, and everybody's around them going, "What the hell's going on?" It's an amazing character moment of those obstinacies that in human nature, and I won't give away the ending, but both of them survive. But there's a reason that it has to end, there's a tragic, Shakespearean type of thing where the one character's flaws are what leads to his downfall, and it made such an impression on Hollywood. It was not hugely received, but this is an amazing movie, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, because it's out there, but it's not well known, because his career overshadows everything else that came after. Overshadows this, but damn, it's good. It is so good especially considering that he's just released Napoleon. It's well worth watching again.
And that takes place, like you said, the Napoleonic Wars.
That's right. It's something that Scott has always loved, those historical epics. And
What's the next time period you're looking at leading up to in the 80s is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Blade Runner.
absolutely.
And it was panned at the box office. It was not a big box office success.
We remember when it came out. It was,
Look at what it is now. It's a cult classic.
Right. It definitely got the Star Trek treatment in the sense that, the fans made it into the big success after its initial exposure.
and it's been re-released 3 times with different cuts.
Right.
Which is
The
would
final
be,
cut
would be the
was
George
last
Lucas
one.
effect.
but
He didn't have anything to do with this middle cut that was released.
That's right.
director's cut, which wasn't really a director's cut.
He came back on the final cut that came out here, and he put his 2 cents into it, for lack of a better word, and so forth, and made a better story out of it.
It's kind of amazing if you know the movie. In the end, he did away with all the voiceovers, which was a studio thing that they added.
Voiceovers were big in the 80s.
They were, and it was sometimes it makes it a little clearer, a little quicker, But when you see the versions, the Final Cut version, we've grown enough we can understand that, and it ends very ambiguously.
Yes.
Very ambiguously. They're going to leave, and then boom, it goes to black, and you don't know what's going to happen. Whereas in the first original Murray, it's like we've got this wonderful happy ending, which Scott did not want.
It does pick up on that with the start of the second Blade Runner,
2049.
Which correct, which I don't believe he was involved.
No, he was
wasn't.
not, other than having started the property, basically.
Exactly.
But it's an interesting concept. You got to think. Do androids dream of electronic sleep? I mean,
absolutely.
He brought about a question here in the 80s that we're starting to face today.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
As AI comes more prominently.
That's right.
We have no idea where it's exactly going.
Yes,
we
and
have
since
fears and hopes on both directions.
Since you mentioned it, we got to give a shout out to Philip K. Dick for
That's correct.
Oh, yeah.
for the book
For the
The
source
Androids.
material.
Wonderful book.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he asked those questions that were intentional to do that. I want to go back in a moment to his big break, which was the first Alien, which was the movie that they proved that, holy crap, this guy can handle a big budget and not just do that, but really change culture. But first, we're going to turn it over to Robert.
So it's a bourbon break. This episode and next episode, we're going to be doing something a little different. So we've done a tasting flight at Cajun's when we were out there.
Back to the Bourbon Festival.
Back at Bourbon Fest, yes. So I am doing a tasting flight here. Now, I've gone probably a little bit overboard, but we're going to have we had a big breakfast. We're going to have a big lunch, so everybody should be fine to drive by the time we're done here.
Yeah.
So
I might need a ride to lunch.
You might need, yeah.
Well, we usually carpool anyway.
Yeah.
So I've got 5 different bourbons we're going to try. We're going to do 2 this episode. And we're going to do 3 during the Code of Honor. So this is number 1. So let's just pass these around, gentlemen.
Okay.
All right.
There's my 4.
Francis for number 1.
Cajun.
Where did you get all these cool little glasses?
Got them off Amazon.
Really? Because I've never seen these before.
Everybody needs 50 shot glasses.
30.
30 shot
30. I only got 30, yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic. Yeah.
So, all right. So this is one that I guarantee nobody here has tried.
Okay.
I have not tried this. These are all brand new, unopened bottles.
All right. So we are taking a little waft, blow the ethanol away, have a little thing here.
I expect it to have a sharp bite, to be perfectly
Okay.
honest.
Let's give it the evaluation.
It's a very unusual scent.
Whoa, that was not expected.
Yeah, I think this is one that probably requires a little bit of ice, a little water to help it.
Yeah,
burn.
it's potent. Oaky. That's the first word that comes to my mind.
Slightly musky.
Actually, it
smell.
doesn't have as much of a bite.
No, it doesn't. I mean, that first sip of
aired out some. Of course, we done have one.
And that first sip of any bourbon neat is always the worst.
I was gonna say, yeah, and because this is all neat. It definitely sticks around the mouth and the tongue. Oh, Martin over here is choking. I hope not.
Is this a?
You just drink too much at one time, or
No, it's the ethers.
yeah. It
Had to taste it with a little soft drink there.
yeah, it's not as quite as sharp as I thought. That I don't want to call it medicinal, but that
It does have a bit of a medicinal almost to it. It's not real complex for sure.
no,
It's
it's
not a whole lot of blend of different flavors.
Caramel comes in after the fact. It's got a sweetness afterwards. Stays in the mouth, top of the mouth, actually, the roof of the mouth, around the teeth.
Sounds like a little cherry on the back finish on it.
Absolutely. That's the back.
I can
finish
see
is
that.
It's a tart
significant.
fruit anyway, whether it's cherry or black cherry, something along that lines.
yeah.
Maybe that's the caramel I'm tasting.
And well, it's
No,
got a
that's not
very
even close to caramel.
no, but
Well-
it does have an almost creamy texture when it's not, which is odd.
Kind of a buttery toffee, maybe.
Yeah.
a
somewhere
little.
along
I
there.
still maintain the
It's very
oak-
small.
The oak.
Yeah, there's definitely some oaky.
That comes
Does
through
it have
strong.
a higher rye cut?
Francis is getting his
I
wood on.
don't know. I
Whatever
don't
it
have
takes,
the
baby.
mash bill on this,
Whatever it takes.
but
We'll find out in a minute. We'll look it up. Once you
yeah,
tell
I'll
us
have to
what
look it
is.
up. Yeah, because I don't even think it was on the bottom.
So it's very good. It's a little different, and like
It's
I say,
different.
Well, to me, that's not an enjoyable sipping whiskey
No.
by itself.
No, I didn't.
Maybe with some ice on it. Or so
So
forth.
I've talked about this bourbon
Okay.
This is the Butcher's Cut bourbon from the Detroit Distilling Company.
Okay.
Now,
Oh, and you were making
Butcher's
fun of
Cut.
my corsets and whips out of Michigan the other day that I found online.
oh yes, yes, yeah.
You said a bunch of degenerates up there.
yes, we are a bunch of degenerates up
I
there.
was gonna say he
Well,
can
that probably
insult
explains
himself.
that musty smell that I'm getting.
Anyways,
Yeah.
So-
did all the water come out of Lake Erie to make?
so
Oh, I thought he was referring to the degenerates.
now, so this bourbon, it's got a great story, and how and where it was. Cajun, would you? But I think one of the reasons why this is not
Who wants to kill this?
a slow slipping bourbon, not slurping, a
May have
slow
already
sipping.
had too much.
Yeah,
Sipping bubbin.
That's what it's good for.
it's probably. I think it would be a
Fast.
decent mixing bourbon. Probably good. You want to put this in your bourbon balls, go for it. But it's a little pricey for that.
Have
really?
you tried it with ice to open it up since you opened
I have not yet.
That's probably what I should have done with
Yeah,
Whereas when he handed it to me, put it over ice a little bit.
As a cooking whiskey.
yeah. I'm anxious to see what it happens with having a little bit of ice and having it opened up.
That may be good in candy recipes because
Yeah.
it's not real prominent in a lot of its flavors.
Right.
itself.
It's not a high rye, so there's not that peppery flavory.
You're
that-
right. Yeah, definitely that.
So I think the issue with this bourbon, my primary issue, I didn't realize this until after I got the bottle. My brother sent it to me. It's only a 2-year bourbon. This is the bare minimum that you would age a bourbon.
That's not bad for only 2 years.
No,
It is, yes. I expected it to be much harsher.
I was going to say that's a different
But
context.
now that I'm really starting to feel it around that chest area,
Yes, it's
too
getting in
now.
here.
It's starting to really kick up after a few minutes.
Yes, yeah.
It does.
So, it's not an unpleasant bourbon at all.
No, I wouldn't
No,
tell me it's
it's
awful
very
at all.
mild. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's
It's not unforgettable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a middle of the line, nice little.
This was
bourbon.
about a $45 bottle of bourbon, which I think is too high for
what
a
it
2-year bourbon.
For that flavor profile, I wouldn't go $45.
No. But again, it's not a bad bourbon. And I think the next time I try it, I'm definitely going to have it
Give
with
us the name again.
some ice. This is Butcher's Cut
Butcher's Cut.
from the Detroit Distilling Company.
Okay.
This is one I've mentioned to you guys before where the guy who started it, his grandfather, I think, worked in the building as a butcher where that has
say,
been
there's
turned into a distillery.
I'm sure there's a story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Behind the name.
And the story sounded great, and the profile on the show, on the podcast I listened to, sounded great. And again, it's not bad. But again, I think it's one of those ones that, I mean, for me, most bourbons have to have a little bit of
Specific. It's
Yeah,
particular.
I mean, dissenting opinion. I would pass on that, dude.
well, but you also didn't have it with any water in it to open it up to see how that changes it
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
So, but I still,
it had kind of like you were licking it off of a stainless steel table.
Now, Wobbit, I have a complaint.
So you're getting a
What's that?
You
metallic
notice
kind
your
of-
book starts
Yes.
with number 4, not
Could
number
it be
1.
lead?
that's the page number,
It might.
It might be lead.
because I saw that too, and I think they're counting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you just about set my ADHD way off the
Yeah,
charts.
because there are there's like 3 or however many pages of the index, and then the first page of notes is number 4.
Makes sense.
Yep.
okay.
Because that caught me too, because that bothered me at first, and then it's like, no, okay. I wouldn't have numbered the index and just started page 1 as the first bourbon notes.
Everything's negotiable.
Yeah, so Cajun is making notes in the notebook here, so that's good.
Yeah, it's-
Okay.
To be fair, it's not one that having sniffed it that I would have bought.
And that's certainly fair. I mean, there's a lot that
Oh yeah. No,
you
no.
can
I
say
mean,
it.
it's not that it's bad because it smells good. It's completely different profile than most bourbons.
I don't know about that, but I mean,
Just
I think the lack of aging is its biggest
Possibly.
detriment because the aging is where you get the complexity.
It is, and but I suspect they're going for that. They don't mind that. It's
Well,
a different
and that
different
could very well
market
be-
spot. It's
It could
meant to be
I mean,
different.
how many markets? I mean, how many 2-year bourbons do you think? I don't think.
Not any. That's why I'm suggesting
Yeah,
that.
I
maybe
mean, that's why I think it's just very odd. Because I expected a minimum of like 4 to 6,
they're pushing back against that. Longer is better.
and that could very well be. Now, and that could
Depends on who.
you can
Depends
get
on
past
who's-
that.
who you talk to on that.
That's
I
true.
suppose.
And it also may be that they're trying to make their money before the bourbon.
And that could
thing
be as
goes
well.
They're
past.
working for thicker versus longer.
Yeah.
That could very well.
Cajun, come on, damn it! Stop writing and start jumping in on all these things I'm laying up for
But
you
it
here.
just-
And
I've
if they're
already
doing
discovered
stuff in the
several.
rick house to help the aging process along as well. So we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Some places they will shake their bourbons. Some places will rotate. Some places will play a lot of loud music.
Some people put it on the water.
And some people put it on the water.
Climate control, size of the rick house.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't
all
know
matters. It's-
any of the stuff that they're doing in that sense.
I mean, it goes back to that one word we love: craft.
Yes.
Well, and depending on how old or how long have they been making.
this is brand new.
Yeah.
So somebody
Brand-
else is making it a location probably different from where they're sitting.
Yeah.
They're just
I don't know.
starting
I
out,
got the impression that they are making and aging in their
maybe.
own.
Are they?
Yeah. Yeah.
In Detroit, as you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just, it
Well, if
just
they're
didn't-
brand new and this is 2 years old, this probably started elsewhere as they were setting up.
Possibly.
Would be my guess.
Yeah, I honestly I don't know enough, and I don't remember. I'd have to go back and find that episode of the podcast, which I think was the Bourbon podcast. Was where I first heard of this.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable,
Yeah,
certainly.
it was.
It's a hard pass for me.
On a scale of
Your
1 to
curmudgeons
5,
have
I'd
spoken.
put it at about 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2.5 at best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, it just didn't have any of the flavors I like. It just didn't have. To me, it didn't have any
Didn't have
fruit.
much
Our master
flavor to me.
taster
caramel.
has spoken.
Any
Right.
It's kind of bland.
It's a little bland.
Yeah.
a little bland and a little again it's
Flat?
like flat. and-
Yeah. Again, I want
Bland's a good word. Yeah.
I want to
Stainless
taste
steel.
it when it's been opened up. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, we have to.
well, let's do number 2, man.
Oh, we were gonna
will.
wait a
We're
little
going to wait.
Oh, that's right. We were going
That's
to
right.
do.
Yeah.
Two
New
different ones
subject,
here.
totally new
Yeah.
subject,
Okay.
except it's not.
All right.
Yeah.
Back to the
We're,
captain.
we're, go-
Yes, back to the captain.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, which I know Martin is over here
Yeah.
jonesing to talk about, Ridley Scott's first big movie that changed
Right,
so many
right.
things.
Yeah,
That was
right.
Alien.
You move from the duelist to this incredible science fiction / horror film,
Right.
and that was really the genius of it, is taking this notion of a science fiction film, but injecting the monster movie piece of it as a horror film.
Right. It's still, I mean, I remember when the commercials coming on when I was, 11 years old, 12 years old,
Yeah.
and scared the absolute bejeebus out of me.
Oh, yeah. I
And
remember
it didn't
that.
show anything. It didn't
I
show
remember
anything.
that.
Yeah.
You remember
Yeah.
that? We probably
You
like,
were
You
Yeah,
would have been older than
shameless.
that. This is 79. So it
yes,
would've been-
well, I mean, because you're talking about,
14
yeah, 13,
years
14.
old.
Yeah.
And it's just,
I saw it in the movie theater with my cousin.
wow.
Scared the
Absolutely.
ever
Oh,
yeah.
shit out of me.
Previews did rattle him some. We'll say rattle at that age.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a thing that,
Because
you know,
I mean,
Right. I mean, you had monster films and you had science fiction, and sometimes they merged, but this was a very unique merger.
well, yeah, because science fiction wasn't meant to be, and some of this is the Star Trek
Right,
leftovers
Star Trek
of
leftovers.
optimistic future.
well, actually, he would credit the Star Wars.
That's correct. That's
not
right.
Star Trek.
Star Wars.
That was the recent thing he's realizing.
yeah,
that,
Yeah.
let's do this different.
Science fiction was this
was
uplifting
It was broader than we.
thing, the future, and it's like, no, there could be some stuff out in space you don't want to find out about.
And
Well, and that's the thing
premise.
about science fiction when you think about it. Science fiction, other than like a Honor Harrington series, that's the Napoleonic Wars in space.
Yeah.
There's one book that deals with an alien species, and you get almost no mention of that the entire rest of the series. It's very minor.
Battlestar Galactica had the same thing. You never
So-
run into aliens. You just don't.
Well, except in the original, you kind of
The original, you had the spider creatures on the one planet.
the insectoids.
Yeah, the insectoid ones.
But when you think about it, science fiction, is got real space exploration running into other life forms. That would have to be the most horrific kind of situation you could
Right.
do. That's what he does really well with this.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much.
And he takes that, that monster trope of that, of the monster jumping out to say boo, and using the effects and his storytelling techniques actually makes that scary when it was never scary before.
Oh yeah, and
Because monster movies, all the scary movies that came, almost none of those are scary. Like the first zombie movie from Romero, that's not scary.
well, as an adult, you're right.
Well, I mean, even in the beginning, because they're slow moving and they're not really like the zombies that we see that we're used to today. So I mean, even that, I have a hard time seeing how people would have been scared at that.
Well, now,
those,
what year were those Romanos movies out?
The first one was like
68.
60,
Yeah,
68.
there was some fear
There were
associated with
a
them back
begin-
there.
there
Even
was
like the day the Earth stood still and stuff. I mean,
there
when
was
that
some
came
of
out,
that. You've
caught
got the
people.
Hammer movie.
That's anxiety, I think.
But you have some of the traditional monster movies that Hammer redid in the 50s,
right,
that
yeah.
added in the blood and the adult and the stuff like that. But
That's shock.
That's right. It's
Yeah.
See, I think there's all of these elements though.
That's right.
There's the anxiety that you were talking about, Cajun. There's very much, any movie that dealt with like nuclear war that would,
H.G. Wells.
yes,
Right.
The Exorcist.
Now H.G. Wells.
The Atomic Age, them, and movies like that those initial Atomic Age 50s monsters movies are playing on a specific
Fear.
Cultural mindset.
cultural,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you'll get a
zeitgeist of the time.
Dang it! You said the same word. You'll
Bird boner.
You'll hit that zeitgeist very clearly. For example, The Exorcist is one that
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes. Now that would
was-
scare people.
that's
Yes.
it scared the absolute willies out of people. And then 2 years.
I just rewatched that a while back.
Yeah, and you got the very next year in '75, you've got Jaws.
Jaws,
And also proved that horror is not this drive-in
Right.
that you can actually make this mass market and really make some money. And I think that's what Alien. That's one of the reasons that they were able to pony up the money.
It's Jaws
for it.
in space.
Absolutely. That's
Well,
right.
it is, but
degree.
it's way scarier than Jaws.
Oh,
It is.
absolutely.
Oh yeah,
That's the thing.
by far. But,
Jaws
you
is
know,
more visceral. It's more you shall
Well,
be eaten.
you know you're supposed to be scared of sharks.
That's right.
Right.
This is.
I mean,
there's
think about it.
That's right.
But you didn't know what you were dealing with.
That's
an
exactly
alien.
right, and that is
Right.
that is the absolute what Scott nailed so well. And some of this is just the way he directs it, and I think we
It
all
is.
agree.
But yeah, there's three different versions of the alien monster.
Yeah.
And you're scared of every single one of them in different ways.
Yeah, because
And he uses that suddenness, that that unexpected move that scares not just you. I mean, it obviously startles the character, so there's good acting.
right.
But I mean,
Well,
when the
that's
egg
not on
jumps opens up and the thing grabs onto his face,
John Hurt's
that's
face,
scary.
The egg layers.
And then, of course, when it jumps, crawls out of his
one.
chest, that scared the hell out of
That's the one I was going
everybody.
to add a point to, that the other actors was not expecting that at the time, and when blood went everywhere, that was a surprise to them too. He
Oh,
did a little
perfect.
trick
Oh yeah,
on them
that
laying
was,
that
was
out.
only John Hurt knew that was coming.
Yeah, he had to. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
he had to.
Yeah,
and
he
that
had
was
to, but
Scott's.
nobody else
brilliance.
did.
That's right. And you've got really great
It was
character
super
actors.
genuine. I mean, Veronica
Yeah.
Cartwright. I thought she was going to pass out.
Well, that's right. And you got at the time these were not big name actors.
Was it cow's blood or something they
Yeah,
used for that
absolutely. You got
episode?
Yaphet Kotto and Sigourney Weaver and Tom Skerritt, who were experienced.
Yeah.
But they were, and John Hurt and Ian Holm, all these folks that we now know as because they've done so much since then, were still relatively young. in
They
their
were not
career.
the superstars.
No, they were still relatively young in their career, and this movie made them, their reputations very well because Scott knew what the hell he was doing and scared
He
the hell out
he
of a
combined
generation.
all of those elements. I mean, think about it, this is only his second movie.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's, I think, what makes Alien one of my favorites of his, maybe my very favorite.
Oh, yeah, and
because of this, because he combined elements in such a masterful way that nobody had managed to combine before.
And he subverts so many tropes.
Yes, I want to hit that.
That's right,
that's
because
a big one.
The Captain Dallas is killed like early,
Yes.
Yes.
and
the one you expect to be the hero.
That's right.
The captain.
yeah, done. That's right.
He's toast.
And yet he never stops being the captain and the hero. He just dies. Yeah, I mean, and it's a good thing.
It's not a fault.
No, not at all.
It's just they still didn't know what they were dealing with, and Dallas is out.
Right, and this is not a military ship. This is a cargo ship.
Yeah.
That's right. And which is again, so many things change, but the big thing for Scott, because this is a theme he'll return to, and I'm going to use this as a
Yes.
bridge to go
Corporate
forward.
greed.
No, no. I mean,
Well, there's
That's a
that
big
too.
theme in this whole
Especially the
franchise.
second one, yeah.
that is a theme that he likes to return to. But his big theme that he is one of the great pioneers of is strong female characters.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a non-cliched way.
Right.
It's become cliched now, but in many respects,
Yeah.
in
His
1970,
female characters can kick ass. Simple
That's right.
as that.
and
Right.
that was
They're
something.
still
And-
very real, though.
But yes, they can kick ass, but not in a way that makes you think that it's contrived or that they're a
right.
Mary Sue.
G.I. Jane, another one of his movies that's prominent with Demi Moore.
That's right, and
Well,
it was very controversial at the time.
I mean,
Apparently-
one of the
Marcus.
things you have to understand is look at his background. his background before all of his films was, as he put it, thousands of commercials.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what he did. And he was used to hitting on strong points on individuals. He was trained in that.
Yeah.
Because that's how you sell. And influencing the people, the audience.
The females in particular, because in many respects,
women, because that was
they
the
sell.
majority of
They
his,
buy.
Yeah, that was the majority of his commercials.
That's who he's trying to get the message to. Yeah.
Yeah, and he transitioned that into his films.
right.
And one of the other things he did was the cinematic experience of his films.
Oh yeah.
is enthralling.
Alien in particular
Yeah,
is claustrophobic
it is.
for a film set in outer space. The biggest open empty space in in our
But the
understanding.
cinematography is
Yeah.
just
And I'm glad you
engrossing.
mentioned that because that's
It's incredible.
Scott.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's Scott. That's
But
one
you know
of his
what?
great
That's
things.
understanding the reality of what his setting. I mean, because
Oh,
yes, outer space is the most open expanse you will, no pun intended there, that you will come across. But you have to put all these people in these tiny little boxes that are
Yep.
incredibly finite. You know, all the things we love about Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica are totally unrealistic.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, all of those battles are like World War II aerial battles,
Right.
And that's not how space battle would work. Matter of fact, David Weber does a fantastic job of making you realize what space battle would really be like. And
Time, curvature, flight.
yes, now he gets a little too much into the
He can't get very technical on it. Yeah.
into the mathematics of that after a few books, but if you can get past that, it's okay because a lot of it becomes meaningless.
Yeah, and then you start jumping over some small sections. when it gets
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
You take your presumption and you run with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you explain the basics the first time, but you don't have to keep doing it and then getting into the details every time. But the point is, though, his books, though, even though there's a lot of, the whole point is the space battle, but it's not, you kind of sort of do get some aspect of that fighter pilot stuff later, but it's,
a few.
but it's with the, when they do the, shoot, I forget the class of the starship now, but they're like fighter pilots. They're light attack crafts with the LAX. But even so, they still follow the same rules, and everybody's in these tiny little tubes. And that's something that he captured because before that, you're right, space was seen as big and expanse, but it's,
there are no cramped spaces on the Enterprise.
right.
But on
the Nostromo, that's
Nostromo,
all
yeah.
you have.
Yeah,
That's all you have.
so much of the film is these tubes and little rooms and
Right.
stuff.
Which
It's
is-
really
But
something
that's-
else.
But
Spaceships
that's-
would be like a submarine.
exactly that's
At the beginning.
the reality
Yes.
of it.
Yeah.
Spaceships are going to be like that because you can't control these huge environments and these huge pressures over large expanses.
You can make the accurate
Not with the
statement.
starting
No.
technology.
Not with our
You got to remember at
technology.
what point
This
you're
was-
at
yeah.
in that time.
Oh yeah, this is practical. This is
Technology
100% practical effects.
Oh, yeah.
and which goes back
super
to
cool.
I think if you want to boil Scott down so much, is that
TV show that was just on Sci-Fi that ran about 5 or 6 seasons that just finished up. Very realistic.
The Expanse.
The Expanse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did a very technical aspect of the current time almost.
And yet never lost the human element, which is one thing Scott did very well. And I think that kind of sums up the way he does things. Is he recognizes all stories that are worth listening to are human stories, but he's not afraid to paint on a large living canvas.
Well,
Yes.
in all of his films.
and he's very good when I think about the movies. Because I'll grant you, I've not spent a lot of time thinking about this prior to this episode. Because you know me, I don't do a whole lot of. I shot my wad in planning for
Right
for
there
the
with
day.
you,
lights,
dog.
yeah.
Right there with you, dog.
But one of the things that you realize when you think about his movies is that the characters are more realistic in that every one of those guys on the Nostromo, you can see, oh yeah, I know a person like that, or I've seen a person like that. Whereas when you look at Star Trek or Star Wars or a lot of the other science fiction, really the characters, and this is not the actors' faults,
Right.
the characters on the bridge of every Enterprise, of every starship, they're all kind of generic.
They're tropes.
Well, it's not even so much that they're tropes,
Well,
because they're not that differentiated in many ways.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. There's some truth to that.
And I just don't mean that they're all a bunch of white guys, because in Star Trek, that's not true.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because in the original Enterprise, that was the most diverse cast ever for major characters in an ensemble show. But really, they really weren't all that different from one another in many ways.
Right.
I mean, there were some.
We're talking about a military organization pumping these people out to fit profile.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to
some of that.
You have to have the same sort of personality to want to apply, and then you're going to go through all the same training. But you're right. I mean, the first oddball really in any Star Trek is Ensign Rowe.
In many ways. I mean, there are unique characters. Obviously, Spock and McCoy and Kirk, they are the three most unique characters.
And the most developed.
And the most developed. Yeah. But even so, when you compare them to the rest of the cast, Sulu, Uhura, Chekhov, they have quirks that define them, perhaps, but they don't feel as real as the characters in Ridley Scott's
That's
movies.
right, and they're
not as slotted.
They weren't written that way.
In Alien.
And that's a
part of that's the time period being done and all. I get that.
Well, but he had a very realistic. This is a commercial enterprise, not an exploration. We're not boldly going.
Sure.
It's a commercial. So it's very much when you talk about the Yaphet Kotto character and the Harry Dean Stanton character, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Where they're talking about their contracts.
They ain't getting paid till they get back, and the company ain't going to put them in luxury while they're out there. I mean, no payoff.
I mean, it was very much this very real aspect of this.
It was down to the earth.
Down to earth.
You share a meal, that sort of thing, and then you subvert that.
Right, but I mean, but think about the others. So look at Gladiator. All right? There are a lot of real characters with actual depth. And again, I know you're talking about television versus movies. You're talking about different time periods. But he manages to do this from the beginning, is my point.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
He does it from the beginning of his career.
He understands there are different motivations. Not everybody's motivated by some grand vision of something.
Right.
Yeah. The Roman Empire or whatever.
The very first scene in Gladiator, you've got Maximus and you've got Quintus, and they are both immediately defined just by their conversation.
Yes.
That literally lays the characters for that care through the entire movie consistently. And that's just, and I don't want to give all the credit to the writing.
And Maximus's motivation is going home, and that's robbed from him.
That's correct. And Quintus is about ambition.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because you talk about that short conversation. The defining line for him is pretty much his first line. Yeah. People should know when they're conquered.
That's right.
It is the arrogance of Rome.
That's right, and it was.
And then his response: "Would you, Quintus? Would I?"
That's right.
That's the humanity.
That's right, and that so lays out naturally and effectively and that's just again, the writer has a lot to do with that, but that's also Scott because he carries that forward.
That's also the actors.
Well, that's correct. I mean, I don't want to boil it down.
It all has to work together.
That's right.
If any one of those things falls down, you're screwed.
But like we talked about earlier, ultimately the director is the one who bears the responsibility
his storytelling.
For it all works. And yes, it all has to work together. Speaking of working together, though, it's time for
the second bourbon break.
That's correct.
All right.
We're going to do this again.
To this.
All right, so this is number 2.
All right,
number 2. I'm number 2.
Francis?
Pass one around to me.
Oh,
I'm kind of landlocked here.
Yes.
I guess I'll take this one. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, pardon me.
Yeah, so we don't have a system worked out for distributing the bourbon.
That takes me back to the cartoon with the fellow going down the seats there. It was actually an animal, I think.
Oh, it was Bugs
Pardon
Bunny.
me.
Sorry. Oh, no, you don't. Take that. That's Elmer and Bugs Bunny, but a little smell.
Sweeter.
Okay, yes.
Definitely more bourbony than the last one.
Bourbony, I like that word.
That was a good term, yes.
Yeah, sweeter.
Okay.
It's got some bite to it.
It does.
It's not awful.
Ooh, it does. Yep.
It's got a similar
sugar cookie.
Ooh, I don't get any
with a little
texture.
apple.
I don't get any sugar.
It's like it doesn't. I like the way it flows across the lips. So it's a little viscous in that sense.
Goes up the nose for me.
I don't get a whole lot of that.
Kind of a snickerdoodle cookie, maybe.
Okay, I get it. The second taste.
I would say like an apple snap. Think of a ginger snap, except replace ginger with apple.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah, there's definite fruit undertones.
All right, this one didn't go up the nose. This one stays in the mouth.
Yes, definitely. You get a lot of this, but again, I find that's true of neat bourbons, not universally, but because the bloom kind of keeps it in the mouth, in a sense.
I'm sipping this one, and it's a very different experience than just
Not a big hug on this one, apparently. Unless
Not yet.
Yeah,
I think it comes a little bit later, so a bit slower.
Roof of the mouth, tongue.
So,
Watch
does
out,
anybody
esophagus.
recognize
Here
this?
we come.
Does anybody recognize this?
I bow to the master taster over here, Martin.
No, I don't recognize it, but I am getting the little bit more sweetness than the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A little bit more to it. Not as flat, not as like stainless steel inside of a vat kind of flavor. So
Is this a Woodford?
Ooh, just put the knife in.
Nope, not a Woodford.
No.
There's a strange smell when it comes in, when it tastes when it first comes out. Not sure what it is.
Well, again, remember this is neat.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I find, is that when you first bring it in your mouth, it's not that it tastes cool. It almost feels light. I don't know how to explain it.
I got a heavy alcohol, but I think I should have blown off.
Well, I think
ethanol.
yeah, you got to blow the ethanol
I didn't
off.
do it that last time.
So let me know when you're ready to know what it is.
Hey, I'm ready right now. I've
So
finished mine.
Martin is going to be very embarrassed because this is the Yellowstone he had during the last episode.
No kidding.
Who wants this one?
I'm
The
good.
first one.
So
Pass it
it's
along.
Yellowstone.
It's good stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
No, it's very good.
yeah, it was just it's a little different.
It's not
Sweet
sweet.
ice in the other.
Yeah, there's
But I mean, I could definitely tell a difference, and this one was much more amenable. So
Oh yeah.
it's not sweet. It didn't come off as
Oh
sweet
no, I
at
think
all.
I think
Yeah.
you get a little. I got a little bit sweet.
no,
at the
I
end.
do get the
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah,
That's to say, and it's
It's
just
very sweet to me,
Yeah.
I've got a very different.
as far as bourbons go.
And I think it does have a little bit of a fruity taste. I think I need to have it bloomed a little bit before I can really get all of that out of it.
Oh, I would
because
agree.
90% of the time we're drinking this stuff over ice.
Right.
And it's a lot more developed than the last one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it
You're
is
right
smoother.
about that.
It
You're
is
absolutely
smoother.
right
It
about
has
that.
character.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
well, it's also aged longer. How long? I mean, this is aged. I don't know.
I
You
don't have the bottle, but I want to say
bottle.
this is
I
like
don't
a
think
6,
yellow-
7 year.
6, 7, somewhere along in there.
Well, this is the white label, so yeah, it's probably closer to the 5.
5,
And this is usually my default. I mean, this is the one that I like to gift. This is the one. If you're going to ask me, pour me a bourbon.
This is
Probably
I
the
forgot
first
to tell
one I
you.
grab.
The first one was 100 proof.
Okay.
And the only reason I started with that one is because I figured it was not going to be the best of the 5,
Okay.
just because of the lower age. It did surprise me. I thought it was better than I expected.
Okay.
And maybe that was the thing. I expected very low, so maybe that's why
yeah.
because I know you, Martin, didn't like it nearly as much. But this was a 93 proof.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
It's a really good spot, and I'm kind of with Cajun. When you do that neat, that it's almost like a little bit of sugar and a little bit of cookie, and
Very different. Yeah.
yeah, just a tiny bit, maybe like a little brown sugar in the cookie kind of thing. So it's
I think
sugar.
over ice, it definitely opens up more flavors on
Yeah,
the Yellowstone.
yeah.
Yeah,
I would
definitely.
find That, yeah.
But I thought that was a much of an improvement. So
So
sorry that Michigan.
hey, first of all,
It doesn't do it for me. Sorry.
you know how I feel. The yes, you can legally call it bourbon, but you lose so much that makes bourbon by not doing it here.
Yeah.
You lose the limestone filtered water. You lose the better variation in the seasons, generally speaking.
Yeah. Well, and you lose a little of the old school Kentucky character in some of this stuff too.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Part of the appeal is that the guy that's the master distiller has been tasting bourbon since he was 3 at his grandpa's knee.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. I mean, you sort of have that with all the people that are diving into the craft bourbon world. They're newbies to it. So there's
Quite often, yes.
The other thing I think is you do have kind of a placebo effect of, if you're expecting something,
yeah.
you're going to taste it differently. It's like what you were saying. You expected to be a very bottom end and what have you, because you had seen the aging, you knew the bottle. You hadn't. So,
but he was, so he was, he was probably expecting more midline.
He was a clean view on it. You had a little bit of prejudice.
Exactly. Yeah. And even though,
confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because once you hear it's Yellowstone, all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, I like Yellowstone.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I worked with it.
Yeah.
It's like,
See, it's in reality, it is very difficult to taste a bourbon blind and really know where. I mean, there's very few, I think, that you can do that with. I think Angel's Envy is one of them.
Yeah.
Because that's very unique in how it hits you.
Wine cask finishing on it makes a very distinct difference on it.
Yeah. So it is gives you a much more unique taste.
I'll say after the first one, the first sip, and I still had some left, I felt like I needed to wash it down with tea.
Yeah, you jumped quickly on that.
With the Yellowstone, I didn't.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
right. So,
I mean, the Yellowstone, not bad.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, I mean, that was not a bad, neat bourbon at all.
No.
That's right.
No.
But having had it before on the rocks, I know that it is better the other way. At least for me. A lot of people swear by neat. A lot of people swear only,
It's a personal preference.
It is. And I've come to realize it is a bourbon specific thing. Most, in my opinion, again, it's a personal preference, are better bloomed with a little bit of water.
I think there's an intention.
Not all.
I think there's an intention behind that it go there.
Well, especially the higher proof bourbons,
right.
the expectation is that you would not always drink it because it's higher proof. But, this one...
A lot of distillers will tell you, put a little water in it, put an ice cube in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where it goes. All right, let's swing back.
Pick it up.
Real
Pick it
quick.
up, Francis.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, because I just got word.
Robertius.
So... told you that the boy had applied to MIT, and we were going to get word today. So he did not get a yes or a no. He got a deferment of some kind. Yeah. Basically, he's invited to apply back in the spring.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, this is a boy who got a 36 on his ACT.
Okay.
And got all the stuff, on resume, school resume that you want. He's involved in all kinds of activities and stuff.
Yeah.
Gets great grades, and he's still got a deferred decision.
Well, yeah.
That tells you the standards at MIT are
let's
way
say,
up there.
I'm
I
not
look
sure.
at it a little different. I say, hey, we're interested, just not right this moment.
Right.
Perhaps, but then again, I think that is the entire Ivy League area, and I know MIT is kind of not quite, but maybe sort of maybe.
Well, it's not quite Ivy League, but it's the premier
That
technical.
is, I'm sorry, that whole industry.
Hey, it's the Howard Wolowitz compared to Sheldon game.
Yeah, perhaps, but
but I think MIT's reputation is deserved.
No question.
Yes.
But the entire system, to me, is nothing but nepotism and narcissism. And
when you talk about
in
Harvard,
general,
Yale,
Just
Absolutely.
what have you.
admissions in general, college admissions.
admissions in general, that's correct.
Feels
it's-
kind of broken.
It,
It's either
absolutely.
who you know or who you blow, son.
Very well put. That is exactly it. And like I say, there's plenty of great schools.
There's
out in
no
the world.
telling what kind of things are creeping into these decision-making processes.
Well, there is high.
Congratulations to him for getting that.
Yeah.
Well,
I
yes,
mean,
'cause
he's
that's
in the
still-
running. I mean, that's still a good.
Yeah,
Not a
he
no.
was not told
Not a
go back
no.
to Kentucky. He was given a good, honest.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
It's not like you said, Cajun. It's not a no. It's because they're going to take the absolute 1% of the top 1% of the 1%
But we're still
first.
interested as soon as we get all the other stuff filled out.
Yeah, we're
we
still
wanna
interested in you,
hear back.
and take another shot because a lot of these people either aren't going to make it, or they're going to go somewhere else.
Well, it's like I always say, you don't have to be in the spotlight to get the best out of it because there's a lot of eyes on you.
Exactly.
very much.
So,
brother.
but most likely, but if he doesn't get in, and again, financial aid is a thing because we can't afford to send him there. It doesn't matter if he gets accepted. But we're looking probably Bellarmine at this point, so which is fine. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Well, I
we
mean,
can all
yeah.
speak to the virtues of that.
Yeah, Bellarmine Center, Transy, all of these are wonderful places
Yes.
that you don't have to go across the country to go to.
The other thing he can do is he could take a year off or whatever and
Backpack
explore.
across Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see that happening.
It's-
No.
Not that adventurous.
Nose to
I
the
think he's
grindstone.
about as adventurous as Francis is.
Thank you for
Probably.
that. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's something.
So he'll go far on one side of it, but he will never follow in the great imperatives.
Well, the boy has talked about wanting to go out of state. Like, he's been looking at several places in Massachusetts. He really liked going to Boston. I wish he had looked at farther and wider. But he's like a lot of kids. It's like, well,
you want to go to college in the South because there's a chance at a beach.
No, he doesn't like the heat. No. He likes the cold.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah,
I can't stay in the sand, so I see where it's coming from on that.
He is a ginger, so he has to stay out of the sun. So yeah.
Exactly.
I worry about him coming home and talking about parking the car by the farm.
Yeah,
that's a wicked pisser, man.
Wicked pisser. Wicked pisser.
Actually, if he said that, I'd hug him. 'Cause that would be cool.
That would be absorbing yourself into Boston.
We better get back to the lineup here.
Yes, because we're officially at an hour right now.
Ask Morton if he ever saw Black Rain.
No, I don't believe I did. That's what
a good
Michael
cop movie. It's
Michael
Ridley Scott,
Douglas,
Michael
right?
Douglas,
Yes.
and Garcia. Andy Garcia.
Andy. Oh
yeah,
Andy
It's
Garcia.
filmed in Japan too.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is. Right,
Pull
right
that one up and watch it sometimes. I think you'll enjoy it. I remember that.
I've always heard that it didn't really super do well, but that it was well made.
It was well made. It didn't do bad.
Yeah,
It was not a box office hit by far, but it was not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the first of Ridley Scott's collaborations with Hans Zimmer, the
composer,
who's done a lot of things.
So
like that.
so he moves from Alien, which is a huge success,
That's
Huge, yes.
to Blade Runner. So he stays in sort of
Blade Runner was before Alien.
No,
after.
82.
Yeah,
and
82.
Blade Runner was 82, and Alien was 79. So that was kind of his next one.
Okay.
And it's still considered one of the most influential science fiction in particular.
not a huge success at first.
It is, but it's still
but
considered
it
one of the
sort
greatest.
of caught on cable.
That was part of it, yeah. And it's just because Ridley Scott made it. It was so good.
It was
You
kind of
can't-
the ascendancy of HBO and
because you kind of got to see it. It was so deep. The source material does this, and I'll give Philip K. Dick a lot of credit for that. When you start going into the nature of humanity at this level, what is human, what is not.
Yeah, it's a little heady.
It is. It is heavy, very heavy.
Yeah.
It is very weird at times. I think. I mean, you've got an amazing.
Visually, it's a very
It's
striking movie.
It's
Very
intended
dark.
to be.
Feel the visuals in that movie.
That's right.
to me.
That's what
Yeah.
I
You
think
watch
that's
it.
what people realize. This guy Ridley Scott is more than just the Duelists. He's more than just Alien. He's more than just horror. He's more than just historical. He has got a vision and a craft ability that because that's what carried him forward. That it was enabled. Because anybody can do a good one once. You got to do it twice. To quote George Lazenby, to get anywhere.
So you take the prom queen home at least once, is what you're saying?
Or marry her.
More, you got to marry her too.
Ironic
Yeah.
that it came from Lazenby.
Well, because he only did one
He
Bond
only did
movie,
one
and he
Bond.
says, he says, my advice to anybody: do two, whatever it is. Make sure you do
Yeah,
two.
do two. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
And it's,
well, you can't leave your mark on something if you only do one.
Well, that's right, because then you're just a flash in the pan. You got to have some
Right.
sustainability, and
Damn, I'm a supernova then.
Well, it comes to marriage, certainly.
so Scott comes out of Blade Runner essentially a success because it didn't do bad. It didn't lose money.
right.
I mean, it was, and it's something that they've realized. Let's let you do what you want to do.
Yeah, he very quickly found that. Now, I say quickly, at least as far as movies go, because obviously he did the thousands of commercials. He said, so he's established a reputation. He can do the things and he's hit the marks and bring things on budget and all that kind of thing. That's which is important. But very quickly, you're right. He does gets to that point where we can let this guy do just about anything.
Yeah, and that's what, which is what he does.
He goes.
Yeah.
Again, I do not tend to follow the directors. I don't look to see who directed stuff like you guys do. I'll know that stuff, but not. It's not. It's also not a primary concern of me when I see the previews. Does it look interesting? Okay, I'll go
I'm
see
the
it.
same way. I either like it or I don't. I don't care who's in it, who directed it, who done what.
Exactly.
See,
so
I'm different. Ridley Scott, I'm going to show up because I've never been disappointed.
right, I get that, and that's perfectly fine. It's just a different approach. So, but all the ones that I can think of that I know are his, they're big. They're spectacles. They are. He does not do the quiet character-driven. Not that he doesn't do characters, because we just talked about that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do that quiet, character-driven story that is about two people falling in love.
Yeah.
He's not doing the Hallmark movie.
Well, no, but
Although the Hallmark movies aren't
and
really a character movie either.
He's
Those are
very
plot
he's
driven.
subversive.
It's
at
the same
times.
characters over and over.
Exactly.
He's done more than you might imagine, though. And
I know he has. I said the movies that I can
that
think
you
of.
remember.
Yes.
That's where he makes his mark. That's what he's known for. That's what he's
Right, which
famous
is
for.
kind of my point, though.
That's why Napoleon is kind of the thing.
Right,
Who
that's-
else would do that?
Right, that's a
Hannibal
Ridley
was
Scott
pretty
movie.
character driven.
Yeah, well,
Very much so. Yeah, exactly. In fact, it's been a criticism.
Maybe not the character we would approve of.
The criticism of Napoleon, as it's out in theaters now, is wait a minute, this is all about Joaquin Phoenix banging Vanessa Kirby, and that's because he's deliberately made a decision to take this down to these two characters, and some people dislike the fact he wins all these battles and stuff, which he does do justice to. Mind you,
you have to do that nowadays. You've
That's
got to
correct.
do the explosions and what have
That's
you.
right, and he does Austerlitz in such a way that is absolutely scary as hell, because we've seen the clips of that, and that's Napoleon's greatest victory. So I think all the criticism against him, and granted, I'm a fanboy, so I'm going to definitely take his side, but he learns all this through, his amazing career of that. His movie after Blade Runner, I want to spend a moment with it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Legend. What you thinking of something else?
No. I wanted to hear you fill in the gap.
Tom Cruise legend?
Tom Cruise Legend.
I did not realize he did that
That
one.
was he.
Yeah.
I see. There you go. Tom Cruise, who at the time was really, because this is
He was young.
he was
Very young.
pre-Top Gun, pre-Risky
Oh, yes.
Business. He's just really making his thing. Mia Sara, which I know you all had a crush on.
Yes.
In the days, she's a very beautiful, amazing lady. Who kind of left Hollywood after that, but she did an amazing job.
She did. There are 3 movies I know her in.
Yeah.
So Legend, Ferris Bueller, and Time Cop.
Correct. Yeah, those are.
Those are the only 3 I know of.
And that's about
And I know
right.
Pretty right.
She's
That's about
done.
it.
I know she's done more, but I just don't know.
But you're right. That's about it. And this was one of her early movies, and one of our favorite actors, Tim Curry,
Yes.
who plays the Satan character with the huge horns, unrecognizable in many ways, but except for his elan and his bluster and his amazing Tim Curryness.
Yes.
We want to give a shout out to Tim Curry as an amazing actor, because he had a stroke several years ago and is essentially debilitated,
Yes.
paralyzed to the point.
I
where
love
he can-
the Tim Curryness
yes,
because you understand that.
absolutely, we get that.
Yes.
I mean,
That's right.
if you know Tim Curry, and you say this got a Tim Curryness to it. That means something.
That's exactly right.
Very well done.
And that's
Francis.
thank you. I love that movie. Ironically, it was one of those movies which was really weird because they've taken the training wheels off a little bit, but not quite. Believe it or not, they filmed that. Jerry Goldsmith, who we all know, he did Star Trek, the first motion picture, and many other movies. He did the score for that.
Soundtrack, yes.
Yeah, soundtracks for that. And in America, they changed it and brought in Tangerine Dream.
Oh, didn't know that.
You have to see.
I didn't know there was different.
Yeah, I mean,
scores.
it's
That's not surprising, though. I mean,
That's right.
I think that's probably more common than we realize.
That was a thing. Tangerine Dream was big in the '80s, and as we might remember, and it was kind of like, let's lean into this. They've recently restored back the original score from Jerry Goldsmith, who, may he rest in peace, is one of the greatest composers he's ever done.
Yeah.
So many different things. I have not seen that version, but now that I've done a little research, hell yes, I'm going to look at it and see how it changes the movie.
The thing that
High fantasy.
yes, it's interesting that early on he does not get pegged into a certain kind of movie, and that's the only kind he does.
That's why I wanted to make sure I mentioned Legend, because you're right.
Are you
yes,
calling Legend high fantasy?
Absolutely.
I go fantasy. I don't know that I go high fantasy.
it's definitely fantasy. I guess it depends on how you want to define high fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He's a fanboy.
Yeah.
But I mean, but the point though is
There's
that
no question it is true fantasy.
I mean, he did the Duelist, which granted it's an historical.
Correct.
He doesn't. Did he ever do a movie that just was set in a modern setting, like New York City?
Absolutely.
Well,
Thelma
Black
and Louise.
Rain.
Black
We
Rain.
mentioned a minute ago.
Okay, I said I never saw that.
Thelma and Louise, which was
Yes, Thelma and Louise.
Thelma
Yes.
which is a huge one I was going to get to in a second.
So, but for the most part, though, he's known for the historical epics or the science fiction epics.
Yeah.
The things that are not
With the big
today.
budgets.
Watch Over Me was a romantic thriller with Tom Berenger and Mimi Rogers.
In '87, that's right. He's done. That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
He's done a lot more than you
Right.
realize.
Yeah,
We just remember those big budget ones.
Well, again, I don't pay attention, so
yeah, and it's just
Well, it's good to fill in the gaps though between Blade Runner and Gladiator.
yes.
Because that would seem like
Because-
that's kind of a gap, but it really isn't.
No,
He
not
was-
at all.
He was working and busy.
oh,
And then
huge.
Black Rain followed Watch After Me.
Yeah,
That's
Over
exactly
Me.
right. Then you got Thelma and Louise in 1991, which of course was an amazing movie for the time. It's
yeah.
it's considered to be one of the greatest quote unquote feminist anthems of all
It
time.
was a really, took the buddy movie and changed it around.
yeah.
And made it a little different and very
Young Brad
engaging.
Pitt in that
Young,
too.
Brad Pitt wasn't anybody in that,
Yeah.
when he made that movie, and yet it's still one of those movies that is an
And it's
amazing.
quoted.
Oh yeah,
Even these days, I
Well,
mean,
it-
some reference, or a quote.
It
to
figures in as one of the underlying themes in my second book. But the two women who take off on the road, they reference themselves
yeah.
as Thelma and Louise.
Road trip.
He also goes back to his commercial roots. He does the 1984 Big
I
Brother
was wanting you to say that
commercial.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I did not know that,
That's
but
it.
now that it's pointed out to me, he's like, oh, well, of course, that's absolutely a Ridley Scott.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
That's right. He
yeah.
does all that sort of stuff like that. He's so many movies. I mean, one of his often forgotten movies, because you can hardly find it these days, 1492, The Conquest of Paradise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he does that with Gérard Depardieu. Before,
Yes, but he's not quite so fond anymore. People are not quite so fond of him.
Oh,
anymore.
no, nobody likes Gerard anymore since he became
Yeah.
a Russian citizen and he pissed on the plane and things like that.
Well, no, didn't he have some kind of sexual assault thing come up?
Probably. Gerard has a long list of issues,
Yeah.
problems and stuff like that.
I mean, if he didn't, I apologize.
Sorry,
But I thought I read something
there
about that.
are-
Are you saying he'd be an excellent person to portray the Medici?
Perhaps, but Gerard is so fat these days, so it's enormous.
Well, wasn't the sadist pretty good size himself?
I believe so.
I think he enjoyed life to the fullest of food and other luxuries.
Trust me, Gerard needs a movie role these days. Hey, I like Gerard in certain roles. He did some very good jobs in certain things. 1492, he makes a good Christopher Columbus. He was still at the height of his time at that time, and it was released. Come on, remember, in 1992. So it's kind of like we had to do this, and as a character to as an actor to portray Columbus well. Yeah, and hey, it's Ridley Scott. It's still great. Vangelis once again did the soundtrack for the movie. It's still one of those movies that I enjoy watching, even now today. Even though Columbus is something that we don't talk about, and we try.
Never watched it myself.
It's worth your time. It's worth your time on that. And I mean, he did a lot of work in the '90s. He did G.I. Jane, that the Cajun you've mentioned before.
Yeah, me more.
Yeah, who was very hot at the time.
And Tom Skerritt, Tom Berenger.
Skerritt.
Which one came back?
That
What
was
that?
I want to say that was Tom Skerritt, who of course had already
getting them a
worked
little
with him.
backwards, yeah.
He had worked with him in Alien, so they there's certain things like with regards to that. But to bring us trying to bring us back in, because it's very hard to try to get all of his stuff done, and I know we're running short on time. Gladiator, in many respects, in 2000, in many respects, is his pièce de résistance. It's his
It
apex.
reestablishes the sword and sandal epic as a viable commercial.
Absolutely.
Yes, and he goes on to do several more
Well, that's-
in a similar.
Kingdom of Heaven was an
Kingdom of Heaven.
amazing movie.
Yeah,
Amazing
I don't think
movie.
I ever saw that.
You really should.
If I did, I just don't remember.
Watch the extended.
Thank you for
Ridley
mentioning that,
Scott.
because it was one of those things. When he does historical epics, they're long, and they had him cut down Kingdom of Heaven to get it into that 2.5 hour mode. And he says even today that was one of the biggest regrets of his entire career, that he allowed that, because
Well, at some point, that's not up to him.
that's correct.
Yeah,
that's
oh,
right.
yeah.
But at this point, this is 2005, 2006. He
I
is.
don't know what the contract says.
He's already.
Well, that's what I
he's
mean.
Already won.
But I
Best
mean, even
Picture.
so,
His history is of himself. He's Ridley Scott by this time.
Yeah.
And it's got to the point where, and we all love Eva Green, of course. she basically had much of her role in that movie eviscerated because for time. And he says that's one thing he hated.
Subplot with her
whole subplot with her and her son, and the fact that she
out.
euthanizes him because he's developed leprosy, which she's witnessed in her brother. And there's a humanization of that whole character and that whole arc that makes that movie so much better.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it if you watch the whole deal.
I mean,
I don't guess I've ever seen the extended version.
You should watch it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, some of it, there's been some criticism of allowing Orlando Bloom to be the main lead, and they think that's one of the reasons that it didn't do as well. He wasn't as big enough of a name as he could have
But
been.
that's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott is known, certainly after the fact, maybe that's not his reputation, but if you look back at his career,
He does that, yeah.
he makes stars.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver becomes a star.
Yes.
Because of him. Harrison Ford, yes, he's had Star Wars and he's had Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
and
you
stuff.
can't. No, I don't
really count
you
that
can't,
one.
no.
But he made him something more than just a one or two note figure.
Yeah.
He helped him bloom into making some other movies that he probably would not have made.
Yeah, he put him
I
in a
don't know.
different category on that, is what I would say.
Yeah, because
Well, he gave him certainly a part with more meat
Yeah.
than he
Darker
had.
role.
But honestly, I think Harrison Ford would have gotten those roles anyway.
Well, but I think
Probably so.
Witness doesn't happen for Harrison Ford without
Maybe.
that's
Maybe.
you're exactly,
someone else would have been in Witness, I think.
and you've
without
got
Blade
several,
Runner.
quite a few
Well,
of
without Witness, you don't do Regarding Henry.
I was going to say regarding Henry is in there, and you've got Sabrina in there, and you've got lots of other movies that Harrison Ford really blooms as a
I mean, I think he probably still does Fugitive.
Well,
But-
Fugitive was a kind of a reboot in many respects. It was kind of like
Yeah, but he had never been in it before.
right, but it was something that his career had, I don't want to say stalled, but had really kind of reinvigorated it in certain ways, and that was some of the reason.
Yeah.
But
Well, he had also gotten to the point where he could choose whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
and
And
What
he
he
didn't
thought,
have
what
to
he
work
wanted.
as
sometimes that's a flaw for
Yeah.
actors that if they pick poorly. He's always been very good at knowing how to do it. Of course, he knows he loves his craft. We don't want to get on. We probably ought to do a Harrison Ford episode. To be honest.
Probably. I mean, look at him now. He's playing a Dutton. So what the hell else? can you
Absolutely,
say?
I was going to say that's and very very well.
But, yeah, I mean, I wasn't thoroughly thrilled with Orlando Bloom in Kingdom of Heaven, but he was okay.
He was he's good with his craft. I liked it.
He's a pretty boy, though.
Well, and that's what's the
I
criticism.
think that's
That
probably
was the
what
criticism.
detracts so much. It's just too pretty to be
that's correct. And it was there
convincing
was
as this war
whereas he's coming off of just 5 years later from Russell Crowe, who definitely sells the hard.
Wasn't
Muscle-
Orlando Bloom in the Lord of the Rings movies?
Yes, he was.
Oh, yeah.
As
Yes,
Legolas.
So, yeah, so it's not
Legolas.
like he's an unknown.
Not at all. He's well known
So,
at this
but I
time.
mean, you made a comment about that he was not established or anything, but he was in three of the biggest blockbusters
Yes,
ever.
but
Well, I
this-
mean, not all three, but
he's lead in this one.
Yeah, I
That's
get
the
that,
difference.
but it's still-
he's not.
he's had exposure.
He's had exposure. He's experienced, so that's why they could sell it. But having him lead the charge, he'd done Troy at this point under Brad Pitt too. So you've got all these things where he's up and coming. Here's a chance to let you lead the charge, and it was okay. In my opinion, you've got some really great actors. You've got some really great moments.
Yeah.
I think Kingdom of Heaven is one of his crowning achievements, and we can talk a long time on so many others.
I mean, Kingdom. I can talk along. I really do enjoy Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah, it is.
I will say
Not
this.
everyone does, and
Yeah.
I respect that.
I
but
don't
really
know.
like
I
it.
may have seen it. Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah, and we kind of have to wrap this up. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many other movies that we could talk about.
He certainly seems to be a director that is not concerned about getting 2 or 3 movies in every year.
Oh, not at all.
Because if you look at his body of work, there's not, a movie every single year or anything like that.
Oh no, he takes his time and does his.
Which he can because he's getting paid enough to do that.
absolutely.
And certainly, like I said, he's got great characters, generally speaking, in his movies. But he is, the big blockbuster kind of guy. You're not going to hire him to do the love story.
No, but
I mean, not saying he couldn't.
that's right. And
That's not why you hire
And
him.
it's right. He's kind of fallen into that, and yet he's done so many different things. I mean, we don't realize so much.
Well, one of his biggest things recently was The Martian.
That's correct.
Yes.
The Martian was one. Was his
Can't pass over that one.
absolutely.
That's an interesting movie and book because it's a book in which the hero doesn't change. He's essentially the same guy at the beginning as he is at the end. The only difference is he's finally made it home.
Survival. Yeah, survival.
Right. He's just made it home.
It's a different theme. That's right. It's a different intention.
It's just one of those things what you rarely see. Because even most survival movies, the character changes or learns something about himself, whatever.
Tom Hanks in Castaway is the perfect example.
Yes,
that's a fantastic example.
I wouldn't say he didn't learn something. I mean, he learned to keep pushing himself, not to give up. I mean...
Yeah, but I mean,
we saw that focus out on the screen itself.
Yeah, but I think, when he gets back home, he's still essentially the same guy. Which is very much like, you're going to go back to Mars? Hell no.
and that's just the genius of both the source material and the movie that he
it's just interesting because I forget one of the podcasts might have been the Story Grid podcast, I don't remember, but they were talking about that and they were laying out, they went into much greater detail and they were basing it more on the book than the movie because the book is going to be more detailed.
I haven't read the book.
Yeah, I haven't either. But it was just interesting because they were laying out the case for it. And it's like, holy crap, that's because I remember the movie and it's a great movie, loved it. And yeah, it certainly he got to play out his strengths and all that, and find out what he could really do. But essentially, yep, he's the same guy when he got home. It's like, wow, that is unusual.
From a story perspective, you're absolutely right. It doesn't happen.
But it worked.
But it's right. If you do it well, if you work through that, I mean, and that's just a tribute to Scott that he was able to do that, and he does so many.
Well, I think it's a tribute to the source material as well.
That's correct. That's right. Because the book itself was a huge hit long before the movie was ever made, and it's kind of one of those things that as aspiring authors they point to, saying, "See, here's how you do it well."
He's done quite a few adaptations.
Well,
too.
It's kind of a tribute to the common man too. You
yes,
can be
exactly. I was going to say that.
Not have to change to face trials and tribulations.
Which
and
is
he is the everyman.
He's Steve Rogers. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn.
In certain ways,
that's right. That's the same thing. It's that
because in many ways, Captain America is the same as Steve Rogers. There is no difference.
That's correct. He goes up against the Ubermensch of the Red Skull, which they did so brilliantly in that first movie. He says, "No, I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. No, I'm not." This
even when he takes on Thanos,
that's right.
He is.
Yeah, he's just I am the guy. But anyway, we could go down a rabbit hole on that. I want to finish all this up. There's so many different movies. I wish we could mention them all.
Well, that's not the point, though.
That's correct. They're all worth watching.
Black Hawk Down.
Black Hawk Down definitely needs a mention. The Last Duel he did not long ago is an excellent movie with Matt Damon. Once again, and I'm sure there's others that. The only one that he did, I will make a brief mention of this, that kind of was Exodus. Exodus, God and Kings is a biblically inspired epic. You think that would be his forte? It's the only one of his movies that really kind of tanked. Nobody's ever blaming him for that. We're not sure what it did on that. There's been a lot of talk about it. But as a general rule, when Ridley Scott makes a movie, people show up.
Yeah, but see,
and they make
material.
Money.
I don't know that you can really do biblical epics anymore.
And that's kind of where we landed
besides,
on that.
Ten Commandments has already been done.
Well, that was also talked about. Why are you doing this again? Mm-hmm. What do you have new to bring to this other than being Ridley Scott? Again, I think Napoleon is turning out to be a triumph deluxe in many ways. It's never going to be a summer tentpole movie. It's not intended to be, but like I say, I've seen scenes from it. I'm hoping maybe to see the actual movie this evening. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. It was originally going to be called Kitbag, which I thought was the dumbest name they could ever come up with, but they finally nailed it where it was supposed to be. And Joaquin Phoenix did great in Gladiator. We'll all agree with that. I think he did a fantastic job from what I've seen in this movie. Vanessa Kirby is an absolute delight. I love her in The Crown and a few other things. Don't look at me that way. Yes, I know she is an amazingly beautiful woman. There's no question about that, and talented. Nevertheless,
well, hopefully Gladiator 2 will make something of it.
I know we're already talking about that. So at 86, he doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
Yeah, the only danger is he dies before he finishes one of these things.
Currently he's as snarky as he ever was, because, like I say, he pushes back with a fist against all his critics over Napoleon, saying, get a life. Basically, this is meant to entertain. It's meant to be good stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind from everybody, even the French guys who certainly have a reason to know so, are saying it's great. So we love Ridley Scott. I'm sorry, I'm a fanboy. There it is.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So how much did Ridley pay you for that?
Not
Not enough, right?
Not enough.
What was it said earlier? It's who you know, who you blow.
That's right.
Okay, we know we got paid.
I can tell you this much: he's one of those guys I would love if he. We talked about who we'd like to have dinner with.
Oh yeah.
Ridley Scott would absolutely be one of those guys.
Okay. So, Francis, what's next? Let's move this on because we're at over.
What's next is a restraining order for Ridley Scott.
The pain.
I did call him Sheldon earlier, didn't I?
The pain.
I got to give that a word boner because that's not even that's really good.
Well, they're going to wrest the captaincy back from me by mutiny, and Robert's going to take over again since we're at his place, and we're going to go to Code of Honor, and I'm sure it won't be anything to do with Ridley Scott because they're going to pummel me for this episode, but goddamn it, it's in the can, and I love it anyway.
Yeah,
but
you did a great job, sir.
Thank you. Somebody appreciates me at least.
You did a fine job. Very fine job. Very fine.
Thank you.
We'll wipe that seat down with a towel.
Of course you're going to go there. Join us next episode, Code of Honor, great quotations, be here.
We hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern, just in time for your morning commute. And every fifth Friday, we drop a special Hoopajube episode. Spread the word we are on all the major platforms, and leave us a review. That helps others find us. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com. Join us next time. Same snake time, same otter channel.